This video is sponsored by War Thunder, a free-to-play, cross-platform MMO military game. Make sure you check out the game in my description or the pinned comment if you want to learn more about it. So this is the character that I played in Gauntlet, and this is the character that I should have played in Gauntlet. And I kind of want to go over sort of my thoughts about Gauntlet, what the progression looks like, what I had planned out. But first things first, why did that even happen? Just to clarify, I think I played the wrong kind of setup, and I was mostly baited by one main thing. Early on, I got a natural drop for Calm's Heart, and because of that, I really want to set up a pure life-based character. I thought it'd be really interesting as everyone else is playing ES and CI. I ended up PoBing about 12.3k, but I ended up missing a bunch of things that actually make a CI character much better. That said, this life-based setup does have better recovery, and you can play max res shields and other things. It's a little bit simpler to set up, does require less alterations for recom, but it's much inferior to the build that I actually intended on playing, which is this piece right here, and kind of the thing that I want to cover today. But before that, I want to talk a little bit about my progression plan. In my opinion, this Gauntlet was probably the event I performed worse in relative to what I thought my capacity and skill was, probably since Sentinel League, so 3.18. I think my preparation for it was relatively weak. I didn't really think about how I should be doing my early progression at all. I didn't really understand when transition stages should be happening, though their overall path I'd spec'd out and kind of theorized before Gauntlet was alright. I didn't really have the time to actually test how long each thing would take and how to bank enough resources to make sure certain strategies are steady. So, my initial plan was to start out with kind of standard duelist leveling, spectral throw / splitting steel into P-Conk, into E-Conk. My notes here are very light because I kind of know how this goes. I played it a bunch. It's what I did at League Start actually. But I need to note two main things in particular. One was Flesh and Stone once I put in Explosive Concoction, and the second thing was Tempest Shield. The reason I put on an Act 4 Trinity is because in Act 5 I entered Slave Pens, which I believe was actually the most dangerous zone of the whole Gauntlet. I'm not sure how many people actually died here, but in my opinion, the most dangerous zone by far. But firstly, a note from today's sponsor, War Thunder. So as mentioned, War Thunder is a really incredible military game. It's very classic, super popular over the years, and really combines a lot of great elements of both, fun things that you'd see in a classic shooter game, but also with elements of realism, interesting physics, and great meta progression mechanics to upgrade your crew. It is a free-to-play game that is cross-platform, really focused on capturing the idea of what war combat feels like, both strategically and at a micro level for you as a player. Right now, you can play War Thunder for free on PC, PlayStation, Xbox, or even on mobile using my links in the description or the pinned comment. And new and returning players on PC and console that haven't played in the last 6 months will also receive a massive bonus pack across all platforms, including multiple premium vehicles, exclusive vehicle decorator Eagle of Valor, 100,000 Silver Lions, and 7 days of premium account. It's available for a limited time only, so please be quick. Make sure you check out that link. In terms of mapping, I guess I sort of had 4 to 5 main sections for mapping. The first piece, after you do initial progression, was to put a lot of Betrayal in. Now, people do all kinds of things with Betrayal. A lot of people like to do Gravicius, but for this particular build, Betrayal was extremely important. Two main things. Firstly, Leo and Riker are both for fishing for uniques. There's actually 3 main things. These guys both give you a ton of mid-tier uniques. A lot of kind of T3s, T2s tend to show up. Leo gives corrupted ones with double corruptions. Riker gives uncorrupted uniques. Leo in particular is really great, especially during early prog, because it can give you things like elemental weakness on hit gloves and feeble on hit gloves, and you can run Doji's Damning on your mercenary. But I'm looking for Hands of Frisia here, March of the Legion, Soul Thirst, the belt for Soul Eater for your mercenary, because that does work for mapping with Paladin, Broken Ascendancy. And then on transportation, it's Chimera Giannis. Now, I did Giannis Gravicius during Gauntlet because I wanted to play with the dip cards, which was a mistake. All I got was some Divine Orbs, and I had 60 Divine Orbs extra. Chimera is really big because it sets up your pool of Edifice Scarabs, which actually makes up the bulk of your farm. What it should have been was probably day 2 to 3.5. Talking about 25, 28 hours of time played. It's just been raw doing Abyss and literally nothing else. Giannis, on the other hand, gives you early game gold. Super important to get your King Smart set up. Once I farm enough gold, and you'd be doing this a long time ideally, I probably would have sent this until like 94, 95. Because the goal here would have also been to get a really solid merc. That also didn't happen for me this gauntlet. I ended up with a Frostblink Wander, which is like not good at all. Other important things to note. Yellow Harvest was important in the early game, so you can do Reforged Chaos on rings to craft. Otherwise I skipped pretty much everything else, and then running every Swirling and Stinging. The reason I want to lab in this particular way is because I want to level Power Class mines to 21, then run all the Uber labs that I banked up, use the lab font hopefully for non-transfigured to transfigured version of the gem, which can be used on a corrupted 21 Power Class mines. The second atlas was interesting. So it's actually fairly light for certain things, but basically it's Legion plus Expedition mostly. Expedition is good to get some early bases going and to get your early life setup gear, suppression cap, that sort of thing, but it's very, very unimportant. I would say in total expeditions this event I ran probably less than 30, and it's really fast because I play KB Merc, and it was more than enough, to be honest. Legion is crazy good. Because I'm doing this in low tiers, Legion is still unaffected, but it gives you a ton of great things like incubators, gives you a 6-link if you want that for some reason. I think it's good for your Warcry setup. Gives you a ton of like base currency, fossils, unique sometimes, map fragments, and also a ton of Uber Lab frags. So mixing Atlas 1 and Atlas 2, depending on how I'm feeling, can be a helpful thing to do. Especially as I'm pushing level 90, I do want to do a little bit of the second Atlas, just to get some expedition bases. The biggest thing I noted here was this thing. I noticed that, you know, pretty oftentimes, like, you feel like, oh, it can just be enough, but because this is a pretty good generic farm, I want to at least commit some amount of time here. At the end of the day, it's really easy to farm Brutal Restraint, so it's not a big deal. The third main Atlas was supposed to happen sometime around finishing 2 stones. And this is sort of the secondary Merc farm after the first Merc farm that I want to do, but it's also in preparation for T16 rituals. There are probably 3 main things I want to get from Ritual. The first, that running special rituals is pretty good because you can get uniques and like other stuff, mostly for uniques though. The second thing I want is King of the Mists. I do want to farm an energy, shield, light of meaning. I think this is non-negotiable in the final build. So getting started on that right away is good because it's not like the rituals are hard to complete, right? And the third thing is from Ritual, getting Omens is quite nice. Death Dancing when you're still in the life-based setup is important. And then that all wants to happen within the first, I guess, like day and a half of Gauntlet. Basically before my first sleep, I want to do all of these things. After my first sleep, my intention was to send Edifice for about 2 full days. Just farming a ton of alterations. It just gives you everything that you actually need to finish the rest of the gear, basically. And also gives you a ton of T17 maps. The idea was to run this in Crimson Township. 2 reasons. Number 1, it gives Sanctuary maps. This is where I would get Dark Seer from. Partway through this farm, I'd also want to finish my 4 stones as I hit suppression cap because it's actually really easy to do. But the 4 stones are really big because it gives you more T17s, and I need on average 30 Sanctuaries for life-based Dark Seer, and I think on average it's 60 Sanctuaries for the Mana ES Dark Seer, which is the ideal endgame one. It also gives you the Divination card for the Enlightened, and it's possible to farm that card out. It's also possible to just farm Enlightened. You get a ton of exceptional gems just from running Edifice, so just a crazy farm. It's what I should have committed for until I had about 10,000 alterations, to be honest. And then finally, there's a final tree, which is just like a ton of harvest. You need about 30k harvest juice, some ritual, delve for some fossil crafts, because fossils are used for both the belt and the rings. And then just like keep on looking for like the perfect merc, that sort of thing. And that should have kind of sent me into what happened at the end. There was one thing I forgot to mix in, which is actually running Delhi, not this, it's just memes, but one thing Gucci alerted me to, I think. Actually, it was other people. Gucci told me about one thing in particular. Farming for the influenced ring is actually much easier to do with your mappers. If you send mappers with like an Elder Guardian or a Shaper Guardian, if it's white, scoured, it will always drop 4 pieces of influence gear, so your chance of hitting an influenced Moonstone ring, which you can then change into something else, and an influence unset, it's actually quite high. The other thing your mappers are really useful for is farming I-84 clusters. I'd say every single time you send a T16 with at least, I sent them at 80% Delirium. I think you need 80% for both bosses to show up. But you basically have at least, I think, 2 84 jewels and 1 85 jewel cluster jewel dropping, so it's really easy to farm out the 84 plus mana reservation cluster from the mappers. So yeah, that would have been the whole Gauntlet plan. And that plan is to progress this particular character. I messed one thing up in this PoB right now. I ended up playing an unset in here because I want to put Culling Strike, I think, somewhere else. But this is the character. So I'll put the skill gem setup first, just because the easiest. In my chest, I played an Enlightened setup. I have a low level precision because I play in the endgame a Blade Ambusher, which can run hits, can be evaded. So accuracy is a non-issue. This is my base aura setup. You can see it's actually not a lot of auras, but Period of Elements is here. But FNS and Tempest Shield are incredibly powerful. You do want to switch out probably Tempest for Arctic Armor when you go into Exarch, and that would have made a big difference as well for stationary gameplay. For bossing, I run Intuitive Link. This is super cool. So Flame Link still gives you a ton of damage because the gem levels give you damage, but Intuitive Link is really weird. It says their hits, your Link target hits, can trigger your support spells for some reason, even though the Blade Ambusher can't leech, can't generate rage, can't do on-kill effects. The traps from it can trigger Intuitive Link, which I found really interesting. The Intuitive Link is good for a couple of things. Firstly, it enables Paladin's Link Ascendancy, which is like crazy broken. It's basically 40% increased Flask effect, 40% increased Aura effect, which is absurd. Because I'm playing an Enmity build, Aura effect for this is really crazy for scaling both Purity of Elements and Purity of Fire. The other thing it does, I guess it's like kind of twofold, it triggers Ball Lightning of Static. This might be unlinked if this doesn't work altogether. Hopefully it does, but I never tested it, but you can play it unlinked, it's totally fine. BLOS is super good. One, it can actually proc leech. It's not a lot, but it does like a tiny amount from here. Because you do have some spell leech on the tree, and you have increased leech rate, right? So you actually get more leech. But the other thing that it's really good for is it procs Dark Seer really well. The blind on hit for Malediction is quite strong. And BLOS is a pretty high hit rate skill. You could also play other skills, like you could play honestly anything, because I'm playing Whispers, but BLOS happened to be one of the skills. Think about Ball Lightning itself is quite good. Anything that's high hit rate, maybe Duration, Firestorm, Pelting, all these are kind of legitimate ideas to go for. But Intuitive Link is really good for that reason. Crazy that it even works, by the way, for a Trapper. We're at a 4-link here. This is Enduring Ancestral. The reason why I put these two on the 4-link is because I pressed them first. So I press AS, Enduring Ancestral. Ancestral is both offensive and defensive, gives you the max res, but also gives you total res, which is great for scaling Enri's Embrace. Just a crazy amount to be giving, right? And then Enduring Cry is obviously endurance charges and a ton of regen, right? Pushes me from 1.5 to 3.5, so crazy for recovery. I really need Urgent Orders on this because it's my first 2 war cries. However, BMC is my final war cry. This tended to be paired with an animation cancel, or if it wasn't safe, I just wouldn't press this right away. But yeah, that's why these are here on the primary utility. My boots, I got my Purity of Fire Divine Blessing because I'm playing March of the Legion, and then a Power Class Mine's Minefield. Pretty straightforward. This is where most of the damage to the build comes from. Just absolutely bonkers. I mean, you know, 3,000 some odd flat fire is insane. Shield Charge, Fast Tracks, Momentum. This to me is non-negotiable. You cannot put Culling Strike here. You can try to put it at the very end and then do what I mean, on this build, it's not negotiable actually. I just wouldn't. If I want to put Culling Strike, I'd put it like, I don't know, on an item over here with Intuitive Link, swapping out more duration with a White Socket or something like that. But because this build is slow, like slow, 30 MS is below what I consider acceptable, and it has almost no attack speed elsewhere, it really needs to play this. In that same vein, I actually would never play Flame Dash. I almost died to Eater because I was playing Flame Dash. Frostmink is definitely the way to go. It also gets to run Frost Shield. So like when conditionals, let's say you want to tank out Meteor, for instance. I don't think you maybe can or cannot. I'm not sure. It depends on how much your Merc takes. It should be able to survive. But against something like that, you can have like a lot of conditionals up that are like really powerful. And that's pretty cool. But yeah, that's another big perk about playing ES. But the biggest things was to enable Flesh and Stone, Arctic Armor, and have actually higher spell block. Actually, you can push to 75 spell block if you get one block jewel or do other things on the tree. Yeah, that's the core setup here. The tree itself, pretty straightforward. Took the OP nodes on Paladin. If this Sensi comes back core, like, or is playable in a private league, my god, it's gonna be the most popular by far. It just feels unreal to play. I mean, this node in particular, replacing Sentry's Benevolence, but also giving 4% increased blast effect is just crazy. Because it enables Soul Thirst for your Merc. Basically how that works is, Soul Thirst will become active, so your Merc will start getting Soul Eater the moment you press your first flask. And then that Soul Eater will disappear when that flask ends. So your goal is actually to scale as much flask effect duration as possible, both like through rolling your flask and on your Merc itself. I'd probably, if I had the resources, annoy Natural Remedies for flask effect duration. It will end, but it won't reset when you use other flasks. You also want to use at-end flasks for that. The tree is super cool. I'll talk about one thing in particular first, so I don't forget. So this guy called Flames, who's like some Twitch chatter troll guy. I think he's like Fub's editor. He talked about this Ghost Reaver tech. So this build kind of looks like it does not great recovery, right? It's got some ES regen, 3.5k, so about 20-something% regen, which is like honestly not enough to survive Ubers. Unless you like dodge everything. But this tech is super good. So you pair Ghost Reaver basically with this flash suffix for damage taken from hits Leech's life. That turns from damage taken Leech's life into Leech's ES, and that can get scaled up by this stuff. And the reason you take this total recovery from life or ES Leech is that it actually helps you hit your Leech cap faster, which is actually quite hard to hit because you're not taking like a bajillion hits, right? You're taking just a few. Some people opt for this. This is stupid because you don't hit Leech cap anyway. But this is a really strong recovery mechanic. Crazy good, especially for things like Annihilation, Shaper Balls, Exarch, Slap, Exarch Balls. Technically, Eater Tentacles to some degree. Eater Beam is actually helpful here. Like everything. This is just crazy, crazy good for everything except for pure dots. But pure dots don't really affect you that much anyway. It's your CI and you have 3.5k ES regen. I play a Trader here, a Light of Meaning here. The rest of the tree is just like, you know, pretty standard as far as things go. Because I go for a very offensive setup with both March of Legion and Hand of Freesia, I end up taking this mastery and using Divine Crown. Pretty strong, all things considered, about 1.2 thousand ES on that. Runegraft of the Fortress super good, and then I also wanted Runegraft of the Warp. I didn't end up hitting that, but yeah, if I could have that, that's super good. The other thing to note about this build and this pathing is that Inveterate is super strong. Pairing these two things together is much stronger than just having Suppression Cap. It's highly, highly underrated. Just because PoB doesn't say like great things about it, it says good things about it, but it's actually like crazy powerful. Let's talk about this. So having uniques in your build is always interesting in terms of an event like Gauntlet, right? A race format. There's 4 uniques and 2 unique jewels, and they're all sort of target farmable. First thing to note, well, actually there's more, because the Merc also runs 3 uniques. Sorry, 4 uniques. Let's talk about each of them. Dark Seer, this is just from the Sanctuary farm. I mentioned I want to run a lot of Abyss Edifice and just generally run a lot of Crimson Townships that feeds into Sanctuary. I also run Strand for Delirium. That also feeds into Sanctuary Mouse. So basically just Abyss Edifice, how you get your T17s. Hand of Freesia, March are the 2 hard ones. There are, 3 to 4 main ways that I thought about doing this. The first is going through Betrayal, and that is how I got 2 Hand of Freesia during the event, 1 March of Legion. I mentioned that I run Riker and Leo in Fortification. That eventually becomes Riker and Giannis in Research. That save pass spawns more quickly. In Research, Giannis lets you buy uniques that are fairly uncommon, and then Riker lets you run 30 Ancient Orbs on any base, and I actually got 1 March from that as well. So I guess got 2 Marches from Betrayal. The other ways you get this, one is Harbinger. Because you're running so much Edifice, later on you can just run your 100 Harbinger Scarabs. It probably takes about 2 hours to farm legitimately 150 Ancient Orbs. It's so fast to do, you just send them in dunes, really great. And then ideally you run like an eye level 59 boots. I had that on my twin character, so yeah, I Ancient Orb spammed that. Whispers of Infinity is target farmable off the boss. You really want to be CI before farming that boss because it does chaos damage, but I had a lot of damage anyway, so it just wasn't an issue for me. I just didn't get hit by the mechanics. The Brutal Restraint, pretty obvious, you farm Legion. Light of Meaning, I mentioned, you just, farm a lot of Kings. Go really fast, you're fishing for Mercs when you're doing that, you're farming for Kings. You might run Betrayal at the same time. You might run Crop Rotation Harvest, but really, you're looking at like anywhere between 10 to 30 second maps, and that go up to about 2 minutes with Harvest in them. So really, really fast, you get a ton of those. On average, I think it's, with no Scarabs, about 4 per hour, I believe, for Audience of the Kings, and then with Scarabs in, it's like, I guess like 8. And like, it depends on so somewhere in that range, basically. For the Merc, same deal here. This also drops on the King, so it's really great to farm King, but you can get a ton of these, very common. Enemy's Embrace is from the new Secrets of the Atlas boss. Really easy to kill, just gotta dodge the melee attack. I think it's a 1 in 10 drop, roughly. I had like 3 of these, I just killed a bunch of them. Taming is very easy to get as well, because barracks tend to just drop randomly. You can farm the div card for barracks Respite if needed, but I had a ton. And then Archon's Tools also drops from one of the new bosses. Pretty good, also interchangeable with Calm's Binding. So double Calm's Binding, or at least 1 Calm's Binding the ES setup, is also good for fights like Shaper, if you want to tank the Shaper Slam. And maybe Uber Elder for the exact same reason. But I tend to like this because it's just great offensively, and also it's a more powerful chill from Skitterbot, so it feels really great. The rest of the gear for the Merc is actually easier to go through first. Basically, if you get any gear with high res and an Abyssal socket when you're running Edifice, you can run that, because then you get even more res on the Jewel. The one thing to note, well, I guess 2 things to note. So firstly, these daggers, I like a Gutting Knife. It's a high crit base, and it's very easy to craft. You can either go Reforge Crit, or you can run a Crit Essence, so you hit the other crit mod or elemental damage with attacks. Then you make sure that you have a clean base, multi-mod, hits can't be evaded, attack pen. Super easy to get. There's some other things you could go for, but I don't really care. You can also Veiled Orb craft this. Fly doesn't matter because you have Power Class, right? The cool thing here is the Necrotic. So you can also play Endurance Charge if you're worried about Merc's survivability. And I guess in retrospect, I probably would have gone Endurance Charge here, because you can actually get permanent Endurance Charge on your Merc. Super strong. But as long as you run the Greater or Grant, they both work, lowest tier. Gain charge every 10 seconds. You count as a unique enemy for your Merc, so you're always getting charges. Super, super, super strong. I also like that ES recovery suffix, just incredible, especially when you're playing with the discipline on yourself, also necrotic base, stuff like that, very good. The shield itself is part of the recombination set. You're trying to farm a mix of T17s and 16s. With T17s, you want to alt those for T1% ES, and basically recom T1% ES, T1 ES, and then spell block. Those three mods together. Once you get those three, you want to use a Shaper's Exalted on the suffixes, and then you hit whatever you hit, right? If you don't hit the Recover ES on block, then you want to lock prefix, and then you can Aug defense. I think it's a safer thing to do. You could Reforge defense, but I personally would actually go for an Aug defense here just to make sure that does not break, because it's very expensive and Harvest Juice isn't that expensive. Benchcraft Suppress, slam something. Or you can like block, I don't know, like ES recovery rate and then slam. Helmet is a 1-1 recom. This actually saves a ton of alterations and a ton of dust. And you can just slam whatever you want for the last thing, but basically T1 flat, T1%, and then multi-mod, Warcry, buff effect, and suppression. It's super cheap. This is a triple T1, so it's a 2-2 recom. You want to go T1, same as the shield. So you need an 86 base at some point. So you go T1% on the 86s, and you always want to have at least one of the bases as T1 hybrid, T1 flat, because those are both 84 rolled, and it's much easier to get 84 Twilight Regalias. If you're really greedy, you could try to conflict this up to a Flask Gain 2 charge every 3 seconds. That's super crazy, but yeah, Elemental Shift otherwise. I mentioned the uniques already. The rings, these are both dense fossil crafts. The goal is to hit %ES. Flat is nice, but you really want to get that flat evasion, so you can enable this mastery over here for 20% increased ES. Unlike Ephemeral Edge characters, I actually do have generally less flat ES overall. So flat ES is not a bad mod to have, but it's pretty good. And then finally, cleanse suffixes, multi-mods, strength, int, and then min endurance charges. Your attributes are a little bit, tight here. There might be adjustments. It depends on like what else you hit elsewhere, like a little bit of int here. Maybe you run like attribute on jewels, that sort of thing. The belt is interesting. So you don't want to get Flask Effect duration. That's the one thing to note. If you have really high Flask Effect duration, your Merc doesn't actually get that Flask Effect duration. But Flask Charge Gain is good. Reduced Flask Charge Use is also good. All these want to be used at end flasks. I forgot to put the enchant on, but they're all used at end except for the diamond. So this spell can be done one of two ways. One is a dense craft, and this will tend to hit %ES and max ES. That's what you'd be looking for. I don't prefer that. I would actually just do this as straight up Reforged defense. Looking just for %ES and Flask Charge Gain or reduced Flask Charge Use, ensuring that you have one open suffix or 2 open suffixes, 1 open prefix, and then finishing with this craft here. Just to flatten that. I think having the extra Flask Charge Gain is really good. And then you need to run 1 Abyssal Jewel for Void Stun. That's why I'm running a Stygian. You could also path this or run Avoid Tattoos, but this seemed fine to me. Really easy to get because you're running Edifice the whole time as well. You will need to farm 1 Conqueror's Exalt, because I don't think you get Influence Stygians from your mappers. But, I mean, that's the single Exalt. You can also use an Elder Exalt on this and then reforge Influence afterwards. Pretty easy to do. Flasks are pretty straightforward. I've mentioned the small cluster. Large cluster is actually a caster cluster. You can also farm voices. Very easy to do. Simulacrum was very easy in Gauntlet. And it's kind of fun anyway. You get a lot of fossils. But I do like the amount of spell block you can get from this. It's just quite a bit of spell block, honestly, to get from these. And it's like cheap, easy, that sort of thing. Jewels are max ES and max res. This is Reforged defense on jewels. I think it's about 17,000 dust or juice per, something like that. I forgot what Ben said. And then you just want to res swap from cold to lightning for the fights that are doing that. For the most part, your res are still fairly high because I'm playing Ancestral Cry. I'm also playing Tri-Elite Flasks. And these flasks are crazy good. I mean, the CS setup is a lot better because you have really high skilled aura effect in particular because of Hand of Ratio, right? And that's really big for your Merc because it's going to scale your period of fire, period of elements. All that's going to feed into enemies' embrace, right? Everything here should be like fire res on suffixes. But it's super easy to actually hit that 200% when you play ES. When I was life-based, I think I was only at like 120 overcap or something like that. So this would have made a massive difference. And yeah, that's the core build. So what now? I think before next Gauntlet, I need to be much more mentally dialed in. I had a really bad time streaming this Gauntlet. It's really frustrating, I think, but I think I just need to work on like my ability to handle noise and stuff. I don't know. It's probably the first time I haven't enjoyed streaming ever. Like, I love streaming. I think it's like super fun and stuff, but this Gauntlet, just the kind of backseating you see is really frustrating, but I think I just need to work on that. The other thing is like, well, I didn't really get to play this iteration of the build because I'm fully set up. So for the next week or so, until like we get some PoE 2 stuff, I'm going to be playing this, roughly speaking, but on a Scion. It will be this character, the Scion chair. I mean, I have to adjust a few things, and I'll be doing most of the progression on stream for this. It's slightly different, more mapping oriented, plays no war cries because I don't want to press so many buttons in the core league, you know, run 65-65 instead of being spell block focused. And I'll see how some of this stuff works, you know, feel things out, especially this ES overleash tech, but I have played with it and it's pretty comfortable. I'm gonna be doing fairly similar progression actually in SF Hardcore as I did in Gauntlet, but hopefully getting things right this time and showing that that sort of build can actually be really good in core league as well in SF Hardcore from, you know, also a fresh start. So yeah, hope to see you guys soon. Once again, thank you so much War Thunder for sponsoring this video. Don't forget to check out the description. You can play it for free. It's cross-platform. It's a great time. Both new and returning players have huge incentives to get back into this thing right now. Make sure you log in ASAP.